Hello, welcome to Reboot. I'm Rebekah Campbell and I will be facilitating this event. So before we will start, I just want to acknowledge the Gadigal people, the traditional owners of the land in which much of us are meeting on today. And because we are online and we're all in lots of different places, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we're all on today and their elders past and present, as well as any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are participating in this meeting. So in a moment, I will introduce Steve Vamos, who is the Global CEO of Xero, for his insights on leadership for business owners in 2021. But first, we're going to hear from our Lord Mayor, Clive Moore.
Thank you, Rebekah, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our Reboot seminars for 2021. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of our land, part of the oldest living culture on earth, and I pay my respects to their elders. I also acknowledge the people of the many nations who live in our city. And I'd also like to welcome the many local experts participating in the Reboot series and sharing their knowledge with our small businesses and startup community. Last year, at the height of the pandemic, the city surveyed our business community to learn what you need to survive and to recover from the damage brought about by COVID. In response to what you told us, we launched the Reboots webinars to equip you with the skills and strategies that will help you thrive in these challenging times. The first series was delivered between October and November last year, with more than 2,800 businesses registered. And I am sure that you will benefit equally from this new series. So thank you for your interest in attending today. And I'll leave you with Rebekah and our local experts to advise you on how to strategize and plan for growth in this ever-changing economic environment.
Thank you. So for those of you that are new to Reboot, this is part of a series. I know we have 350 Sydney business owners registered to attend today, and I know lots of you have started running these programs in your offices at lunchtime for the team as well. So it's awesome to hear those stories coming in. If you haven't been to any of our other programs, I would recommend you check them out, and we're going to share a link in chat to the videos. So last week we talked capital raising with Rick Baker from Blackbird and Kylie Fraser from Eleanor. The week before that we had Ben Thompson, the founder and CEO of Employment Hero, and we were talking about operating for growth. And last year, the series that Clover Moore just mentioned, we ran 6 events on digital marketing. We had the founders of Koala, Pedestrian, Vino Mofo and TEDx Sydney, and some great events there. If you want to check out those videos, please do go to the link. So today we are going to vary the format very slightly. Instead of starting with a presentation, we're going to start with a Q&A discussion between Steve and I, where I'll ask him a few key questions, and then we will introduce 3 Sydney business owners to share how they've approached recovering from COVID, and also to put some questions to Steve. So we have 3 incredible business owners today joining us. We have Emma LaRusso, who is the founder, CEO of Digivisor. We have Ali Ackle, who is the owner of Toby's Estate, the coffee group. And we have Sam Marciano, who's the founder and CEO of Tix. So I'm now thrilled to introduce Steve Vamos. So Steve is global CEO of Xero. Given everyone here, or most of the people here, are business owners, most of you will probably be using Xero. Xero is accounting software that is used by more than 2 million business subscribers. And as global CEO, Steve is responsible for 3,000 employees. So I first heard about Steve from a friend of mine who was working at Microsoft when he was CEO there. And I remember her describing him as the best boss ever. And I was lucky to meet Steve back in 2015 when I was running my business, Hey You. Back then he was on the board of Telstra, and he'd kind of developed this reputation for being incredibly insightful in the areas of leadership and innovation. I also saw Steve speak at many events, and I know he did a lot of work in supporting particularly women in business. And he was also president of a not-for-profit. So I'm very excited to introduce Steve. Welcome to the screen.
Thank you, Rebekah. Good to be with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to give your insights to the community today as well. So my first question is, when I first met you back in 2016 or so, you were a consultant, you were an executive director, I know, on Telstra. You seem to have a really awesome life. What was it about Xero that tempted you to jump back in and take that CEO role again?
Well, it was the work that I was doing exactly as you described that led me to connect with Rod Drury, the founder of Xero. And Rod and I were chatting about where Xero is at in its journey, and he asked me if I'd help him. And help him sort of put in place the processes and the capabilities that Xero needed to continue to scale globally. And having that opportunity to work with Rod for 18 months really gave me a chance to understand how special Xero as a company was then and is now. Serving small business, let's agree that small business has been, in a sense, that last frontier of the technology industry. We've now at a point in time where we can serve small business really well, and I love the fact that Xero's purpose is about making life better for people in small business. The product and the partner community of Xero is something super special. I'll never forget. I bumped into a couple at an Air New Zealand function, and they asked me what I did, and I said I worked for Xero. And the fellow looked at me and said, "Xero saved our marriage." And I started to laugh, and she said, "No, he is serious. Xero did save our marriage." And just the sense of connection that our customers have with the product, and also our accountant and bookkeeping partners, was special. And then finally, it was really the culture of Xero that attracted me, that what Rod had created was the place where I wanted to work, where I wanted to be. So all of those things lined up, apart from the fact that having the opportunity with my background to be involved with a global technology business that originated from the Southern Hemisphere was really special. And for that reason, I wanted to get in there and do what I could to help Xero continue to grow and serve its customers.
Awesome, thanks. And so most of us here are business owners, and we all have our own stories of what has happened over the last 12 months. I'm just very interested. For someone who's running a team of 3,000 employees across the globe, I'm just interested in how you managed those first few months, and all the months of 2020. Is there anything that you particularly, that you think that really worked? And is there any stories that you want to share from that time?
Yeah, look, I think that certainly those first 3 or 4 months where none of us had any real idea as to what was happening and how it was going to shape up, sort of really threw us very much into the fundamentals. And for me, it starts with your people. So a lot of what we did was aimed at trying to quell the fear that our people faced. And that's tough as a business owner, because you can't really make guarantees anymore about anything. But what you can do is make it very clear to your people through your actions that they are your top priority. And we demonstrated to our people that their safety and their care was our top priority. So we really worked hard to help them transition to work from home. We were in constant contact. Our people leaders, I'm really thankful to them, because they all stepped up and stayed really close to their people. So that was, a fundamental element. The second was our customers. And really what we had to do was just on a dime shift our focus from all the new stuff we were doing to really looking at everything we're doing in the context of how do we help our customers. So everything from building services around how to get access to government support, changing our product development pipeline so that cash flow management tools and advice were accelerated and other things were traded off, integrating, JobKeeper into our payroll solution to make that efficient. Those things really came to the fore, along with a whole bunch of other things we did really aimed at supporting our customers. And finally, the fun part was trying to figure out from a financial viewpoint what it was we were facing. So we did a whole bunch of scenario planning, and we sort of looked at the worst case through to the not worst case, and we adjusted our investment rate, our expenditure, just to give ourselves a bit of breathing space to conserve just in case things got really, really bad. So those were the 3 key areas that we really focused on. And, really with the strength of our people leaders and the culture of our business and the care for our customers, we got through so far okay, but it's been very challenging. And certainly my hat's off to everybody out there that's faced this, because, I think relative to many of you, I think my job was easier given the scale of Xero and the resources we had. So really respect everyone out there that's had to deal with what we faced in the last 12 months.
So is there anything, times of crisis is when people change and learn the most. Is there anything that you learned as a leader at that time?
Look, so this is I'm 41 years in the technology industry, which over those 4 decades has thrown many exciting challenges at me, be it individual company crises, like IBM's problems back in the 90s, Apple's problems in the noughties, or actually it was the 90s as well. So the one thing that I've learned consistently, and you continue to learn and appreciate, is how important it is to connect and share. It's the only thing you have at your disposal in changing and unpredictable times. It's connect with others and share your experiences and listen to them and learn from them, because nobody really knows. And so the only way you can find your way through is to have that real mindset of staying connected to your people, to your customers, to share everything you can with each other and with them. Because it's amazing how people do actually step up and help you if you're willing to share the experience and also that fear of not really knowing what to deal with. So connecting, sharing has got me through, or been what I've leant on in every crisis I've faced, and that came again to the fore in this particular case.
So as you mentioned before, this has hit small business owners particularly hard, particularly who don't have the same resources as a larger tech company. Is there anything, you must see a lot at Xero in terms of how small businesses are reacting. Is there any advice you would give to the business owners at the event today?
Yeah,
what should they be thinking about this next year ahead?
Yeah, it's tricky because, I can give some general thoughts, but it's really, this is where, you've got to have tremendous respect for people who are running businesses, because all the best generic advice in the world doesn't replace that ability to act specific to your business and your customers and your people. But just generally, I think that what we observed was, it was amazing how many of our small business customers immediately responded by staying close to their customers and working out how they could adapt and serve their customers differently. We had one small business customer that was in the business of building staging for theatre and productions, and they moved to producing furniture for people to work from home. So more ergonomic furniture. So it's really about, I think the most important thing I think is to think about your customers and how you can adapt. But that's really equally reflected by, you've got to look after yourself and your people. So the critical thing there is, you can't change things in your business without stopping and pausing to think. And so I think a big part of it also is being able to stop in the face of crisis, take a breath, have a think about what you do, how you look after your people, but also how you may be able to get help from others. Sometimes if your reaction is just to do more of the same, it can lead you down the wrong path, particularly when the answer is to change what you're doing. So I think the critical thing has been, stay close to your customers, adapt what you have as best you can, and then clearly, and you expect me to say this, and the truth is in the numbers, using technology is a really good thing. Now, the interesting thing about technology, we did some research that we published on this, and we surveyed the performance of 300,000 Xero small business customers across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And there was a direct correlation between their use of technology. The more technology they used, the less impact to their revenue and their levels of employment through the worst of COVID. So technology is important. Use it as broadly as you can. The truth is that what's behind great use of technology are business owners who are prepared to change things and who are prepared to pause to implement new ways of doing things. So I think the root cause, if you want to look at it, of success is that owner mindset of embracing change and being willing to change. And technology is a great tool to use to drive that change.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to start now by introducing Emma. So Emma LaRusso is founder and CEO of Digivisor. So Digivisor is a platform I'm sure many of you will have seen that helps businesses track the effectiveness of their digital marketing and social media. And they also act as a digital marketing agency for several businesses as well. So Emma, I thought if you could describe a bit more about your business, and I know that you've got a few questions that you'd like to ask Steve, particularly on leadership and learning.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rebekah and Steve. They were really good insights that I'll hopefully probe a bit further. So just a bit more on Digivise and how we coped with COVID. So first of all, everything we do is about helping businesses understand their digital marketing. So we built a platform that allows businesses of any size to easily see in one place all their organic, earned and paid social search web performance data and what content is working for them, what's driving best results. We're across Asia, in the US, and we're growing through partnerships, and about 55% of our revenues earned overseas. Interestingly, because of that, when COVID hit us, we actually had very early exposure from China and Asia, and then EMEA. And so by the time COVID hit Australia, we were hit very fast, and people stopping marketing. So event driven, particularly for B2B organisations where people were spending money. So where we doubled down, and it was the opportunity for businesses, particularly I imagine the audience that we're talking to today, was how do they go digital? How do they actually understand where their investment was? It took a few months, it got a bit tight on cash, and then we're at a point now where businesses really care, particularly retailers who may have had digital offerings but still largely led with a bricks and mortar offering. They've had to really answer the now very empowered customer who is more online, and expectation of frictionless, fast online experiences. So it's been an interesting time for us. Focus was one of our keys. The team, because we were tech at our heart, adapted very well to working remotely. We're now in a hybrid situation. But Steve, the questions I have for you, I was recently at an offsite with a number of successful tech founders. They were all minimum Series A, many of them Series B. And the question that came as an outcome of all this change that people were facing was, how do you build a high performing, best talent leadership team? How does that translate into a high performance culture, one that does adapt through change and continues to build without fatiguing? So really curious, because you've gone through so many different organisations at different sizes and stages, like what's the heart of your advice around building, first attracting that right talent, but having a high performance leadership team and that performance culture?
Yeah, look, thanks, Sarah, and good to see you, and well done on what you've accomplished. Really super impressive to be as internationally successful as you have. So well done. Look, let me start a little bit first with this idea of how do you build a great team. I think at the heart of this is you, as a CEO or business owner, you have to decide that is a critical function that you are accountable for. Often this is one of the challenges, I think, is that particularly as you're building a business, you do tend to start with very much a focus on what it is you do every day. And then you start to bring people around you. And then all of a sudden, you've got all these interesting dynamics and challenges of complexity as more and more people form your team. And I think that's really one of the kind of points in the journey where a founder CEO has to decide whether they really have an interest in being that head coach, that team leader, who really is going to care about that aspect of the business. And that's got a huge number of dimensions to it. I mean, one is, okay, how do you unify a team? Well, first of all, you want to make sure everyone on the team is excited and committed to the purpose of your organisation. So getting clarity of purpose and aligning each person on your team and knowing that they are aligned with purpose is important. It's a very human thing, purpose. If you thought just about the organisation you're in today, if you suddenly decided that you're no longer doing what you're doing but doing something completely different, you'd probably find quite a few of the people on your team would say, well, that's great, I've enjoyed my time, but that's not where I want to go and what I want to do. So purpose is critical. I think then you look at the priorities and the values, the behaviours, and really make sure that the kind of work you've got to get done and the way you want to get it done fits with the people on your team. And remember, it's really, I think sometimes we get very concerned about the idea that, someone might not be a good fit for us. But I always think, remember, we may not be a good fit for them. It's not all about the employee. It's also about the company not being a good fit. So having those honest conversations about, are we aligned in purpose and the priorities and the way we want to work, is a really healthy conversation to have at all times in reviewing how your team are coming together. And then on top of that, you've got the relationships. But the reason why it's important, I think, as you're growing your business to be focused on this and good at this goes to the first part of Emma's question, which is about how do you attract good people? And there's no magic to that. But as you go on your journey, the more people who deal with you or deal with people who work with you that are positive about your environment, that's going to make a big difference. And as you get more momentum, you'll find that people will seek you out and want to work with you because they hear you create a good work environment. Other than that, until you've got that momentum and that experience and scale, it's really hard because attracting the right people is really very much a relationship game. And so again, probably the other thing I would say is really use your networks. Don't just leave it to the recruitment process. Talk to people and ask them to talk to people they know, and really use your social network to connect you through people who respect you and know you to others who might want to come and work with you. Lots in that question.
There was, and they're good tips. I wonder just how do you keep those priorities clear in an organisation of 3,000 people?
Yeah, well, we spend a lot of time on our strategy and communicating our strategy, and we have three key priorities, and we repeat it all the time. One is to drive the adoption of cloud accounting around the world. Two is to build the platform, which means to add more services and applications to our ecosystem that small businesses can use, because we're beyond accounting now into being a business platform. And then the third is to make sure we ready Xero for continued growth and innovation. And that's really about investing in our business so that it can continue to grow and scale. Because as many of you will know, as a founder, CEO, or driving a growing business, it's almost like every day you're dealing with the gap between where you are today and where you want to be. Yeah. And so really making sure that you're thinking and investing for the future is a critical mix, and that's why that's the third priority for us. Mm-hmm. But keeping it simple, communicating it a lot, and then connecting it through your initiatives to every individual in the company is critical.
Yeah, they're good principles that you can make decisions against too, which sounds great. Back to team makeup, how has that changed over time? Because, that, again, was one of the challenges that a lot of the founders were talking about, is that as you're going through different sizes, what might have got you from A to B doesn't necessarily get you to the next stage. And when you're needing to bring in that higher talent, or different ways that you might be resourcing or looking at overseas markets, how do you scale and do that in a growth stage, maybe even ahead of profitability, which was Xero's experience as well?
Yeah, well, look, this is why kind of going back to this idea of do you have a mindset of really looking at the team and coaching the team is so important, because you'll find that your operating model, particularly in those early years of a new business, almost runs out of steam every 6 to 9 months. So what happens is you appoint certain people into different roles, you decide on the way you're going to operate, and that serves you really well for 6 months. And then around the 9th month, you're going, oh, gosh, this role is now outgrowing the person that's in it, or the way our business has evolved means the way we've been operating has to change again. And so you really do need to have that view of things. It's it's a really interesting thing. Our operating model at Xero is still evolving, I think, pretty much on an annual basis. And one of my teammates just recently said, Steve, the truth is, for every one of us on the Xero team, it's like we're in a swimming race. When you're watching the Olympics and you got that line, which is that line that says this is kind of, the line you're chasing to win. He said, we're all chasing that line. And if we fall too far back, it probably means that the company needs someone else with more skills or different skills to come in and help. So if you're growing fast, and I hope you all have that opportunity, that is the challenge of growth and change, is you always have to be open-minded about needing different capabilities or needing to change the way you're operating.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that comes to the heart of also who you hire, that adaptability and the mindset of people. Having headed up a ASX listed technology company and then now going through it with Digivisor, I know the importance of partnerships, and Xero is very well known in how you collaborate and build those partnerships and find, great ambassadors and advocates and work with industry. What's your advice in finding the right partners and distribution channels, and how do you go about evaluating that? How important is that to your strategy?
Yeah, it's super important. And, I think a big part of the magic of Xero and what it's accomplished has been the phenomenal partnership with accountants and bookkeepers, then the work that was put into connecting with banks and getting them engaged. And they've been great supporters as well of our collective customer, our joint customers, and making sure that they can leverage what Xero has and get that really working for them. And then all the app ecosystem partners that we have, and there's over 800 of them that are developing applications that connect to Xero. So it is in our DNA. I think we are a good partnering organisation. I think it comes down to strategy first and foremost. So partnering for partners' sake makes no sense. It really has to be, there has to be a good reason for pursuing partnerships, because they have to be meaningful for you and also for the partner. So you'll learn that very quickly, whether or not you're barking up the right tree or the wrong tree, because the conversations you'll have as you explore partnership and you actually try them, the experience you get will really inform you going forward. So to me, partnering, it has to be strategic, but it also is trial and error. And it is one of those great examples where mistakes lead to learning, and sometimes mistakes can lead to great outcomes where, failed partnerships, you shouldn't get too down about that, because at least now you know, and it can probably point you in a better direction. So have a look at your strategy, work out in what aspect it is, whether it's in building a product that you want to partner or distributing it or going to market, whatever it is, it has to be aligned with your strategy. And then from there, it's a very human dynamic of connecting, testing, learning and adapting.
Good tips. You touched on the wins. I think it's true. It's got to start with the win for your customer, then the win for the partner, and then it should, obviously win for you. If you get the three right, then you're onto something. Steve, thank you. I've just got one last question. Where do you get your inspiration from? You're leading a large organisation. You've been working with some amazing people in all your board positions. But what about just you? And then what advice would you give other business owners?
Yeah, look, I've certainly got tremendous inspiration from the Xero community, our people, our partners, our customers, and then just, with the time I've spent in the tech industry, to be in a space that's serving small business is super exciting. And I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing, in, the role that I have and the people I work with. So inspiration is plenty. There's plenty to inspire me. Look, I love the technology industry. I love watching the success of others as well, and seeing how the industry continues to evolve. I love the fact now that when I started work, if you wanted to build a business, it was something very local and something very much related to, let's call it the traditional industrial age of, well, it wasn't even that, because you couldn't scale. It was gardening, it was opening a shop. The opportunities were limited relative to what they are today when you can leverage technology. I mean, as a small business today, there's no reason why you can't start to think global about reaching customers. And you also have these amazing platforms you can leverage that reduce that cost of getting going and getting started. And what I love seeing is the way the Australian tech industry is continuing to grow and evolve with awesome businesses and entrepreneurs. So that's super inspiring to see those successes and that development.
Thank you for that, Steve.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Steve. And Emma will stay for questions if you have a question you'd like to put to Emma. I would love to have Emma back as a host of one of these programs, because I know you're incredibly insightful in digital marketing and lots of other areas as well. So thank you. I now want to introduce Ali Ackle. So Ali is the owner of Toby's Estate. I'm sure if you're in Sydney, you will have heard of Toby's Estate. They have 14 cafes across the country, and also sell coffee beans into many stores. I know my husband is a huge fan, and is always ordering Toby's Estate bags to our door. So Ali has some questions, particularly around innovation in retail. Retail's been hit super hard by COVID. You had an interesting way that you approached it right from the outset. I'd like you to share first, maybe Ali, how you approached COVID at Toby's Estate, and then your questions that you have for Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebekah. Pleasure to be on board. It was very interesting to listen to Steve and Emma and their wise words. Just a quick insight on who I am. I am the not the owner, but the national licensee of Toby's Estate Coffee. I have 14 retail flagship operations under our portfolio, mainly Sydney-based, we're in Melbourne and Brisbane next quarter. So a little bit about my journey. I had my first cafe operation open in 2008, at which point it was an independently run cafe, not serving Toby's Estate coffee. In fact, not much knowledge on coffee, nor by chance I was born into hospitality, and it was something that was passed down through parents and family. But when I was thrown in the deep end and told that I had to run the operation, I very quickly had to find my feet and get knowledgeable about coffee in the industry as a whole. First got introduced to Toby's Estate Coffee approximately year 2010 at the Fine Food Fair over in Melbourne. Made my introduction to Toby Smith, the founder of the brand. Got talking, we became good friends, and I think it was in 2012 we had a cup of coffee and discussed the ability or the option to move into a license agreement, at which point in time I became the national licensee for the brand, and Toby went off overseas and focused more so on Asia and the US. In the last 10 years as the licensee, we've grown our business from 1 to 11 operations, which we are exceptionally proud of. It's been a journey. It's been a really hard journey, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. The last 12 months have been really tricky for us. Now, in terms of how we approached the pandemic, we looked at our relationships more so than anything else with the assets. We deal with the likes of Centre Group, Lendlease, Mirvac, to name a few, and we look at our relationships more so as a long-term kind of arrangement, where I had to look at COVID. You know, I had to look it straight in the eye and say, okay, what are we up against? And the great unknown was the biggest hurdle to get over. So we made a very conscious decision to stay open in CBD Sydney, all 14 stores we retained and opened through the pandemic, through every stage of the pandemic. A really tough decision to make. We took a really big financial hit, and for a few months there, with all the government support, and it was great, and with all the support from our assets, we were still on the brink of collapse. I have it a little bit easier being a larger sized operation. What we would normally do is offset a good operation with one that wasn't so good, but at the worst of it, there were no good operations, and we were dropping a considerable amount of money trying to keep our doors open. So the journey was tough. It's been really comforting that we've had some great support from the assets. I've had a really good run. Our government has been really strong with its communication, with its support. I think we're very lucky to live in Australia, and the support that we've had, I think, is second to none. So that's a bit about me and my journey, and a bit about the background of my operations. One notable thing that I will say is it was really hard for me as a operator to effectively keep my 150 odd staff, just to give them that reassurance that we're going to get through it. For me, it was quite poker face like, where at the beginning, the great unknown kind of it wasn't an easy thing to look in the eye and take on. But I essentially took it as an opportunity to lead from the front, and it was very much poker face. I was asked a question by my staff about our future and about their future. I really had to keep a poker face approach, and and look it directly in the eyes and tell them it was going to be all right, knowing full well we didn't know what the future lied or had in place for us. So, a few months in, we kind of strategized and we were better off for it. And whilst the industry was kind of running in one direction, we were looking for opportunities in the midst of the pandemic. We got quite aggressive with the rollout of our business over the next 24 months. We not only successfully negotiated, but signed on 4 leases that will open in the next 24 months. Sizable operations. When the market was at a stalemate and no one had any consumer confidence, we were very active on the ground looking for opportunities moving forward. Essentially rolling the dice.
Hey, Ali, I'm sorry just to jump in. We're just a little short on time. That's an awesome background. I know that you have some questions specifically on innovation. Would you? Yep.
Lovely. Yeah, I've got 3 questions for Steve. Do you have any insights on where you see automation going in retail to mid to long term?
Hey, Ali. Hi, good to see you, and thanks for your debrief and well done on you getting through it. I mean, it must be really tough, and you can tell from how you describe it. It was a very challenging time. Look, I haven't got any magical answers for you on automation. The funny thing was, I thought you'd love this, is that our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, recently gave a talk on the fact that in the face of automation and AI and machine learning, he was still going to go down to his cafe to get his coffee because he said that, at the end of the day, there is a tremendous breadth to the human experience. And, even really interesting, even the evolution of our economies in the last, if you go back and look at the way from the industrial age, so let's call it the technology or knowledge age, connected age, how service industries have really become so significant in our economies. So it's really hard. Look, I think that ultimately you've got to start with your customer and you say, okay, what problem are we solving for our customers, or what benefit are our customers receiving by virtue of us adopting technology or automating or taking advantage of whatever it is, a new approach that we can see. And then obviously it's not even that straightforward because at different stages of development, different technologies are easier or more sensible to adapt. So I think the critical thing with automation, robotics and all these new technologies is to stay open-minded, possibly make sure you're connected to people in your industry that are really focused on using and adopting. Check out what's going on overseas, and then just stick to the real focus on how it really benefits your customer or you in serving your customer, because there's a lot of hype and noise with technology and trends that I've experienced over 40 years, and it's very hard to tell the ones that are real or not in the early stages. But the critical thing is to be open-minded to change and to be informed and to see what's happening in your industry elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, for us from the very beginning, we used it as a comparative advantage against a lot of the other cafe operators. We first looked to tap into order ahead applications, and it's really in the crust of our business. Now it's a situation almost operators need to get on board or unfortunately get left behind. It's one of the scenarios, I guess. My second question for you is, how do you think we should think about our value proposition in the face of all this change as small business operators?
Well, look, I like the fact that the question really does hone in on value proposition. And my experience over the years, and this is not pointing fingers at others, this is businesses I have been in, is that having clarity around value proposition in itself is something that possibly doesn't get as much time as it deserves. A lot of us can tend to kind of slip back into focus on our product or our service, and value proposition by definition means that you are really in touch with your customer and their experience and their needs, and you're tuning your business to evolve with that because those needs can change over time. So I think just being focused on that and really making sure that you get good customer research and insights. It's really, really interesting. We track Net Promoter Score. We also want to get more sophisticated than that and really, use other data and technology to help us understand our customers' experience, and managing the digital funnel engagement with our business, like many other digital businesses, is a key part of that. But it's just important to be focused on that and really listen to your customers, understand their experience, and then again, look at what's happening elsewhere to see what competitors and others in your industry around the world are doing, so that you can stay ahead.
Yeah, we've certainly looked at efficiency as a main area of value proposition. Operational efficiency is kind of moving forward in leaps and bounds. The technology behind how we make coffee, consistency is a topic in our conversation that we touch on a lot, and especially in the way of coffee, because there's such a little place for error with a product such as coffee. So we look at automated technologies in the way of manufacturing coffees now more than ever. Everything from the way we put the group handle into a grinding machine. We press the button, the grinder comes out at a stipulated or programmed dosing method. Our coffee machines, although look like conventional coffee machines, are super automatic machines where they now use technologies of weighing the liquefied shot and timing mechanisms to start and stop shots. Even through to hot milk, where at a press of a button, you've got spectacular milk now coming out of your espresso machine. So definitely an area of value proposition for us. And also another area for us is wait times. We now use online platforms like Hey You, where, earlier on it was that the millennials were very much in tune with using. Now we've got everyone typically more so used in corporate environments where people are time poor, but online and order ahead strategies in the way of as a value proposition to increase wait times, where essentially during peak hour, it's a good 10-minute wait for a cup of coffee. We're now getting our customers to order coffee 10 minutes out, come in store and have their coffee ready and waiting, which is a great value proposition. Now I've got one more question for you. I'll make it a quickie. How should a business like ours view innovation? What practical things could a team like ours be doing to ensure that we're ahead of the game?
Yeah, look, innovation to me is about changing things for the better. And one of the things I really encourage and recommend is that you don't just look at it as something that someone does, that it's something you expect of all your people, because in any organisation, all your people, if they understand the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish, and that's a responsibility we all have, is to make sure our people understand what our core purpose and priorities are, then anyone can actually see opportunities to change things for the better. So to me, is innovation in product, service, or any aspect of what you do that is an improvement in the way things are done or new things that are being done, and they can be initiated by people in your organisation in any position, if they're willing to act on what they see and work with others to make it happen if it's something that is beyond their own individual areas. So to me, innovation is change, and change for the better.
Lovely. Thanks for your insight on that. We certainly accept it. We appreciate it, and we strive forward with innovation, technology and automation. Thanks for your time, Steve. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Good to talk.
Lovely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ali. So last up, I'm going to introduce Sam Marciano, who is the founder of TIX, which is a safety compliance platform. Sam has a team of 28 people based in Darlinghurst. So Sam's 3 questions are based around the transition towards remote work and how to manage that as a leader. We are running short on time, so I'm going to ask to keep the introduction a little brief, Sam, and we'll just try and get through the questions as quickly as we can. And if you have questions, please keep them coming in the Q&A. We'll do rapid fire questions at the end.
Thanks, Rebekah. Great to virtually meet you, Steve. I'll keep it very short. I think Rebekah did a pretty good high-level intro of the company. So we've just hit a milestone. We're in 10-year operation, so I'm incredibly proud of the people and the product that sits behind the brand. We're across 32 countries, and as mentioned, we're here in Sydney. I have a big issue with growth and with the people. Through COVID, we actually grew double. We kind of like double the revenue, double the people. Now, our biggest kind of issues wasn't about mobilizing our people through COVID. We're a tech company. That was easy. But my first kind of big core question was, given the flexible hours that we're now introduced, and these are conditions that are here to stay indefinitely, How do you have incentives that work to keep those face-to-face just happen more frequently? So people are attending the office more, people are coming to those town hall discussions, which I think are very valuable, or is it just something that maybe I shouldn't be too worried about?
It's a great question, Sam, and we are still learning. I'm still learning because we've still got parts of our business around the world that are in complete lockdown. And working from home, and then in New Zealand we're almost back to normal with the occasional hiccup that comes along that we still get concerned by. But so we've done a little bit of work, and we've laid out what we think the future of work is going to be for us, which is an environment that is working from the office and working from home. So we definitely don't think that things will go back to exactly how they were, where the expectations were that you were physically in the office a lot more. We're still learning about the things you sacrifice in that instance, and the things that you gain. Interestingly, there were elements when we surveyed our people very frequently, and what was really pleasing through that was that communication was rated better than it had been before, and motivation was still very much at the same level, or actually slightly above. And the question is, we're still this has been 1 year now, so it's still, I think, a learning process for us. But what I think that we will find that we haven't fully appreciated is what we have given up. Now, one of the interesting things in New Zealand has been that as things have gone back to normal, people are gravitating back to the office. So people are sort of coming back. So we have our Friday get together, and that's last Friday here in Wellington. It was very, very, very busy. So people are gravitating back to being physically together. My team's spread all over the world, so I'm certainly feeling right now the challenge of having meetings compressed into online meetings. I think we are missing that time where you just get to talk. One of the things that we're using an application called Donut, which is scheduling informal meetings. And I think that the challenge here that I think we need to face into is the need to schedule time for the informal chat, because if you have an agenda for every time you talk in this environment, you don't get the benefit of that serendipitous connecting of ideas, thoughts, and people. So I guess just to summarize, you've got to rely on your people leaders a lot to keep your people connected, so that as COVID, let's say, becomes less the issue and it is more an environment that's mixed, your people leaders really understand their roles are about keeping their people connected. Informal time schedule, I think, is critical. Using applications like Donut or whatever might work for your organisation is worth having a look at. So no magic answers, still experiencing it, but I do think people will gravitate back to being physically together, but we won't go back to where we were before COVID.
No, great, and I think you're correct. You kind of answered my second question, I think, with some of the tools such as Donut. I mean, being a tech-based company, those corridor conversations were vital for us. That's how you actually get more innovation around our current platform or solving big complex, solutions for our clients. I find that if you try doing it through Zoom or any other kind of medium like that, they were so structured and they didn't really get down to the core, and you felt like you're in and out of meetings and forgetting the substance of like what the solution was, what you're trying to actually achieve. Are you finding those challenges? Are you saying that, tools like Donut and maybe those kind of infrequent meetings are going to help organizations like ours to kind of get back to that new kind of normality of innovating and providing those solutions for people?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's no doubt that we are missing out on something by virtue of working the way that we are. So, like, if you look at eight faces on a screen is different to 8 people around a table, and that whole time that you spend after a meeting, just kind of thinking about that meeting, and then the pennies drop, and those pennies can drop if there's a number of you together. it's a collective process, which is something that a price that I think we are all paying. I think we'd be kidding ourselves to say there isn't. And it is coming through in some of the research that's going on that organisations haven't really suffered too much in the area of doing what they know how to do, but all the change and new stuff is where there is an overhead. So what you end up doing is probably having more of these kind of meetings that might have been consumed in a proper offsite meeting, because you just can't get through what you want to get through in a reasonable sitting on a screen. So I don't know what the answer to it is, because I'm living it, the challenge as well, where with some of the change initiatives and people initiatives, you just miss something there, and you've just got to do the best you can. It probably means that after meetings, you're spending more time one-to-one to try and understand what people thought of the conversation, rather than being able to kind of draw it out in the room with everybody. But you just got to do the best you can. I do think that getting that time with each of your people, just to debrief and to have a conversation, encourage them to do that as well, I think is really important, so that net you are spending that same amount of time together, but it's not physical as such.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. That's all I have.
Good to talk. Thanks a lot, Sam. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Steve. We're going to go to a few questions from the audience just for the last 8 minutes or so. So the first question that's had the most votes, Steve, you mentioned earlier that you decided to cut expenditure for a while to be safe in the early stages of COVID. Question is, what was your decision criteria, if you had any, of what to cut back on, given that you were in such a competitive space?
Yeah, look, we were very fortunate in the sense that with the nature of our business, it wasn't so much we cut, it was just we slowed investment. So if you look at software as a service, if you're in that industry, you'll know what I'm describing. But you basically have a momentum that builds from your previous periods of time where you've added subscribers, which then funds your ability to invest more in the business. And what we did was just slow additional investment. So, we obviously looked at go-to-market investment. It wasn't exactly a great time to be advertising, given that all our potential customers were in the process of trying to work out how to survive and get through. So that was an obvious area where we could spend less. In fact, and then travel, we obviously didn't spend money on travel. So it wasn't. We're fortunate to be in a position where it didn't get to a point where we had to take massive action. So recognise we're very fortunate in that respect.
Cool, thank you. Question from Aaron. So he's asking, what are the key metrics that you use to monitor the health of your business year to year, kind of weekly, monthly, yearly? But perhaps even broader, how do you set goals? What kind of period do you set goals for? Is there anything you can share on how you manage in those key metrics and monitoring the health of the business?
Yeah, so maybe starting with the big picture. So we look 10 years out, and we look 10 years out at the size of the addressable market for our service and what could be possible. Then what we do is we work our strategy back to the next 3 years. And by doing that and having that 10-year view, you get a sense for some of the things you need to do in the next 3 years that you might not have otherwise. You might have crossed them off or missed them. And what that really reflects is the need to be planting the seeds now for those opportunities for growth in the future. So making sure your 1 to 3 year view doesn't miss the long term is really critical. So then what you do is you say, okay, over the next 12 months, what are the key metrics in our plan and that we want to use to track our performance? In our business, the critical thing is about subscriber additions. So adding more subscribers, and there's a terminology in the software, in the subscription software business, which is net new subscriber additions. So you'll obviously always get some churn, so you want to make sure the net new you're adding, and then net new you're adding monthly revenue. It's called net new monthly recurring revenue. How much subscriber revenue did you add to what you had in the previous month? That's really critical. And then aside from number of subscribers and that revenue addition per quarter, the big numbers are obviously the same numbers everyone worries about. Revenue, is an important number, and managing your expenses and your budget to whatever your plan is obviously very critical as well to deliver whatever the bottom line outcome is that you're looking for.
Cool. A couple more questions. One's from Adrian, which is a great question, I think. So there's a lot of businesses here that sell to other businesses, particularly for them and businesses that rely on partnerships. So you used to do a lot of face-to-face meetings. So how can you connect and share with people and build relationships where you can't get face-to-face anymore?
Yeah, it was interesting because that was a very real dilemma for quite a few of our teams. One of the things they said was, the good thing about COVID is that no one's going anywhere. So you can actually get to people, and it just comes down to their willingness to connect through this mechanism. So we very quickly moved a lot of what we do in a physical sense to being digital. So we have an annual conference that we run in the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere called XeroCon. We couldn't do that, so we created Xero on Air, and we did it digitally. So we're continuing to do a lot of events using, obviously, the ability to do that through this kind of mechanism. And, people have just learned to persist that, instead of being able to physically book an appointment with someone, I just ring them and organise to have a Zoom or whatever tool that you use connection with them. So again, it's tricky when they're new relationships because it's harder to build a relationship with someone you're not physically connected with. But people have just adapted and learned to adapt to do that, because was it necessity? Necessity creates that ability to make it happen.
Cool.
Just one thing, Rebekah, before on the previous question, I also wanted to add critical metrics, customer metrics, NPS, Net Promoter Score, or any metrics you have to survey whether you are making positive progress and looking after your customers is critical. We also measure partner satisfaction. We also measure our employee engagement and employee Net Promoter Score as well. So we really do look beyond just the numbers at the overall balanced scorecard of how our business is performing.
Cool. Thank you. I have one other question, which has had a bunch of votes from Joel, just around, I'm not sure, implementing innovative processes in different cultures. So given that it's an international business, things may, some cultures may innovate or create in different ways than others. In Joel's case, he's working with Indigenous cultures. His question is, how do you create that dialogue and make sure that you're, approaching innovation in the way that best works in that culture?
Yeah, look, I think you have to start with the why. So, a few years back when the innovation movement started in corporate life, the big word that went with it was collaboration as being key, which is basically connecting the dots to come up with better things, better outcomes. And it used to fascinate me because a lot of enterprises went crazy promoting collaboration and wondered why innovation didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen was the purpose of all of that has to be clear. And so, in other words, you have to come up with what is the bigger picture reason for us to be innovating and collaborating to create something new. Why? What's that purpose? So you have to have that. And it varies between different organisations at different times, and certainly if you're talking about different cultures and wanting to appeal to them to activate their innovative capabilities, you have to motivate that by engaging them in the why and even having them frame the why. So what problem are you trying to solve with this innovation? I mean, it's a wonderful question that is often asked, but sometimes too often not asked when people come up with great new ideas, which is, what is the problem you are solving for someone else? So I would say the common thing to really create as a foundation is that. So, and you have to, the purpose, the why has to be engaging and motivating, because you won't get that innovation, that spirit of creativity, if people aren't excited or motivated by what that purpose is. So make sure you don't skim over the why, because it may well be that if you're having challenges with different cultures is because the purpose you've laid out in the way they understand it isn't motivating enough. So I think that's what I would recommend, is really make sure that that problem you're trying to solve, because that's the thing in a big company, that or bigger enterprise or any enterprise, you've got to get right, which is that all of us understand the big picture so that we can become the innovators in what we do, by judging whether what we're doing really is making that contribution to the bigger picture purpose of the organisation we're part of.
Cool. Thank you. That is a great question to end on. Great answer to end on, sorry. Thank you very much for your time today. We've gone 2 minutes over 3. So first I want to start by thanking Steve. I know you've been very busy managing Xero, so thank you very much for giving up an hour to spend with us today. Also thanks to all the founders, to Emma from Digivisor, Ali from Toby's Estate, and Sam from Tix. Thank you for giving up your time and also being so open in the way that you're willing to ask the questions today. I just want to remind a couple of things before we go. This is part of a series. If you want to join us next week, please do. We'll put up a link now of how to book. We are doing emotional intelligence and resilience in the face of uncertain times with Craig Davis, who is one of the co-founders of Sendle. He's also the only person in Australia licensed to give the Google Search Inside Yourself content. So he runs a great program, and I'm sure he'll give us some great insights next week. If you would like to be featured as a case study in any of these events, please email the City of Sydney business email address, which we're also going to put up in chat now. I hope that you enjoyed today. I know I learned a lot, and it was just awesome and very interesting, and I took a lot of notes. Thank you very much to the City of Sydney for hosting these events. I'm Rebekah Campbell signing off, and hopefully see a bunch of you next week. Thank you.